I'm Joni Cooper, Director of Programming for DocLands Documentary Film Festival here at CFI. I'm thrilled to welcome the Director of The Dilemma of Desire, Maria Finitzo, as well as editor Liz Kaar and composer Miriam Cutler. Thanks so much for joining us here in cyberspace. First, I just want to say thank you for making this film. I learned a lot, and I personally am advocating for it to be required viewing in schools and out.
Well, that's what we would all love, and it's kind of funny because in the process of making the film and then editing the film, I think Liz and I learned a lot, right? And sort of grew from being maybe a little uncomfortable at times with the content to being warriors for the clitoris. So that's what happens.
No kidding. And this is actually one film that I really wish we could be screening in a crowded theater with a rambunctious live audience to really understand what's going on.
Yeah, we made the film to be screened with an audience, and Miriam did that beautiful end composing so that no one I think I said to her at one point, and she said, "What do you want for the ending?" I said, "I don't want a single person to be sitting in their seats when this film ends." So that's still my dream. And, we'll have to look towards 2021.
Yeah. Well, that would be perfect. And I'm so glad that I picked up on the vibe that you wanted, because I really felt it. I was up in my seat.
Thank you.
Now, how did you put your production team together? Had you all worked together before?
So Liz and I have known each other for a long time because she and I are fellow Cartemquin Films people.
Right.
And we had worked together on a film for a while called In the Game, and then we had gone to the Amazon together on another project, which was quite a project. It's sort of funny. I mean, I have to be really careful with sun, and I had sunblock, but Liz from Minnesota, she would put sunblock on underneath her clothes, and I was like, wow, that's a whole new level. Anyway, that was quite an ordeal. And then when I started on this film, I don't think I ever thought about anybody other than Liz, because one, she's a really wonderful editor, but she's also a young, hip woman. And I knew she would get it. And I knew that her viewpoint and her viewpoint in the world, the way that she was in the world, would help me as an older person rise to that level of making it relevant to young people.
Well done. Well done.
Thank you for the kind words, Maria.
And then I didn't know Miriam except through her work. And when we were looking for a composer and someone to create the sound for the film, it was really important to me that I choose a woman. And so we looked at a lot of people and then reached out to Miriam, and we're really, really happy that she decided to come on board.
Well, I sure love the title sequence, and paired with Miriam's wonderful music, the opening, it was like a mystery that was to be cracked. Did you have any specific influences, Miriam, when you were putting your thoughts together for the film?
Well, first of all, the minute I saw it, the cut they sent, I was just blown away, because I didn't realize what a prude I am. And I think it has to do with when I grew up and the way I was raised. But watching the film, it was so illuminating. So I knew immediately that I had to be part of it. I'm an old hardcore feminist. And anyway, I felt very strongly there should be women's voices in it. And, the emotional tone that we would set for the film was really important and a real balancing act. Because while it's really bodacious, and really just pushing the envelope in terms of, content, it's also quite serious and involves a lot of painful history and personal experiences of women. And so I think that Maria and Liz created a lot of moments where we could have some fun and just be kind of like outrageous. And then there were other moments that were really important to establish how serious this subject is. So the opening, I was really, I really asked her a lot about it because I wanted to make sure that for the opening and the ending of the film, that's where you want to, the way people enter into the story and the way they leave, those are really important, that you set the proper tone and have the right balance, So, while it was sort of, I think I could have played the open as a comedy, like this is ridiculous, but it was too serious. So we went kind of epic with it, I'm glad we did, because we established right up front that it was very important not to be laughed at, but that there were moments where you could point out how ridiculous the situation is.
It was really so funny at times that it was sad.
Yeah.
That to me was just extremely powerful and touching. Now, Maria, why or when or what idea spurred you on, or what experience spurred you on to this film?
You mean how did I come up with it in the first place?
Yeah. What made you say, hey, wait a second.
Well, I like all filmmakers, once you finish one film, you go into a deep depression until you can figure out your next film. And I had a really hard time funding the last film I'd made. And I said, okay, I'm going to play by the rules that are now in place, and I'm going to come up with something that people will throw money at me to make. So I came up with the idea, who doesn't want a film about women and sex? And so I thought, okay, female sexual pleasure, I will have so much money, it'll just be everywhere, right? And that might have been true had I not tied the whole notion of the film to women's equality and agency over their bodies and all of the things that get in the way of our having body autonomy around our sexual desire, whatever that desire is. That's when I made a wrong turn in terms of funding. But I believed in the film, and I still believe in the film. And I thought that at some point, if I could just really get something to show people, that they would jump on the bandwagon. And honestly, that never happened and that's partly because what we as women face. And that is that women's sexual pleasure falls into the category of pornography almost all the time. Whereas men's sexual pleasure is what drives culture, what great books are written about it. Philip Roth almost won a Nobel Prize doing nothing but writing about it. And that unfairness, is a big hurdle to my getting funding for the film. But I was still able to get enough funding to keep going, and the people in the film and the subjects and the women doing work were so compelling that I wasn't going to stop. And then, Liz can join in. I don't want to blab on too much. At some point, you become so committed to the mission of what you're trying to do that, you're so far down the rabbit hole that you can't get out and you can't turn around. I don't know, Liz, if you want to join in.
Yeah, I mean, the power of the subjects, I just, as an editor, you spend a lot of time going through raw footage. And this project in particular, I think every time I would sit down with new footage, I would learn something new. I would become so excited with the stories people were sharing. They were so intimate, so interesting, but I was not only surprised by the content of the stories, but also just how open people were, about certain things that I was really, I was like, wow, that is so brave of people to be so open, and, I consider myself a pretty liberated woman, but I didn't know what the clitoris looked like before this film came around, and everyone I talk to feels that way. Or, most people don't know that. But yeah, I mean, I think just the quality of content, just constantly, I was always excited to get new footage, and then of course, crafting it just editing is the long slog, you cut something together and then you recut it and then you recut it and then you recut it 47 more times, and then it works. And, this film was different because it was more of an argument film than a verite film. There were definitely verite moments and you were seeing people in their lives, but it wasn't the same thing as you watch something unfold for 5 years. You know what I mean? And there are certain almost plot points, it's very much more of an argument and you're crafting it in a different way. And I think that was a interesting new challenge for me as a filmmaker, especially because oftentimes those kinds of films are talking head documentaries, when you're kind of crafting arguments, and this one wasn't. It was this very interesting hybrid film, nothing like I had ever cut before, you know what I mean? It was very exciting, and I think it turned out great, I think Maria picked such wonderful subjects, that just had this richness of story and material, and then Miriam crafted this beautiful score, and I just feel like it really just came together,
Well, and I have to say that you did such a fine job of melding the stories together. It wasn't like one woman's story and another woman's. I just felt that it just became one beautiful whole with the editing and the music and the subjects. It was just, to me, such a powerful film in whole.
And I think what I can say from, and I think Liz would certainly agree, is that it took a long time for the film to really start to feel like it was a whole. Mm-hmm. And there were many elements, the graphics and all of that, which we both knew as long as they stayed in a rough form or were not there, it would be hard, those things, they would be missing, that glue would be missing in the film. And I also felt that way about the music that would ultimately be in the film. And that's why, Miriam's music, when it came in, music is always a whole nother layer of narrative. And what she was able to do was, just knit it all together seamlessly in a way that the film then became an aesthetically whole thing, right, that fit together.
Yeah, yes, it came together so well, and I have to agree too that the subjects that you ended up with, each one of them just had such an immense amount to provide to the whole story, which again put all the pieces together in so many different ways, and the graphics, that made it actually a bit lighter, I think, which helped.
It was fun.
Yeah, it made it so much more.
But very editorial, in a fun way,
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to say that when I would get the cuts from them, the music that Liz was choosing, it's every time I work on a new film, I get turned on to the aesthetics of the filmmakers as far as music. And a lot of times I hear stuff I've never heard before. And I just felt like it was a really great guidepost for me in terms of the tone of the music and the emotional content of the music and the point of view of the music. And also helping to steer me a little younger in terms of style, so...
Me too, Miriam.
It's so funny though, because I was thinking about it the other day from our last conversation, and some of the temp music I was using was a lot of the stuff I listened to when I was a teenager, Portishead, Gossip. And I thought it was really funny because it's that was kind of the time of my sexual awakening, and I somehow veered towards that music when I was first picking it. And what I like is some Portishead ended up making it into the film, just a couple pieces. But it was funny because Sophia Wallace is the same age as me, and I think Sheila was oh yeah, Portishead, just she came up at the same time. So I think that's funny.
But what you did was you sort of provided an emotional tone that I could read from the music.
Yeah, absolutely. But
very angsty,
Yeah. Oh, totally. But I also think that you brought. There were so many places that we just couldn't find the right cue to go there. It was just like, and we kept trying. I mean, there was one section where we tried
I know the feeling.
And so it was so wonderful when you came on and just brought those sections to life with this, fresh idea,
Thank you. It was really fun. Yeah.
And I think that one of the things that your music did, Miriam, so Liz had this kind of irreverent, funny, Portishead stuff, but then the film has an elegance about it.
Yes.
And your music is very elegant, and what was so amazing, what was so great is that you were able to create this elegant score with violins and women's voices that all felt like they worked with Portishead and the gossip
and hip hop,
and hip hop.
Yeah.
And I always thought, God, we're giving her such a hard film to compose, because it's a lot of things, right? It's not just one story. And so I thought that must have been a huge challenge for you as a composer. I was grateful you had the talent to take it on.
Well, the thing that with every film, it's finding the vocabulary, the musical soundscape of that film that's unique to that film. And I always think of it like a big pot. I'm making a stew. And you guys throw in some stuff, oh yeah, here's some Portishead, here's some gossip. And then I love the Red Blonde or whatever. Oh my God, I love that stuff. Great. It's probably 20 years old or something, but I never heard it. It was fantastic. And I throw that in, and then I go, but it's a score. I want it to be cinematic, so I'm going to put strings, and I want the seriousness and the maturity that is the material to also be there. So it's just a stew, and I throw it in the pot and see what happens, and you kept, and then you gave me really great feedback on every single cue, giving me information that I could then refine and get closer to what we're trying to do. A lot of times when I come on a film, the filmmakers have been there for years even, and they just are so into the material, and I've got to kind of catch up. Where are they coming from? What do they really think about this? How do they feel about it? What do they want this moment to mean? So I can be kind of annoying asking a lot of questions, but it does help us get there.
Did any of you have any particularly synchronistic moments that just kind of popped up, whether it was an edit that you found or a piece of music or a subject, anything?
Well, I think this is probably a good time to bring up the ending.
Yeah, there you go.
Because it was, and for this kind of a film, like Liz was saying, it's an argument, but there's also a lot of emotion in it. And the only way this film would pay off is if it paid off in the ending. And it had to be an emotionally uplifting ending. And it had to feel empowering, because there's a lot of really tough stuff that you hear in the film, a lot. And I didn't want people to walk away bummed out, right? And so Liz and I knew for a long time that ending had to really uplift and be a climax to the film. And so what that was unknown to us for quite a long time. And when you don't have a piece of music, it's hard for an editor to cut, right? Because that's what they're cutting to. And so it had been for a long time when I would exercise, I would listen to that song from the Women's March, Quiet, right? And I would listen to the 17,000 versions of it that are and finally I just thought, oh, to hell with it. I'm gonna take these versions. I took as many versions as I could find. I threw them at Liz. I said, here, cut an ending to this. And so she did. And, obviously it was rough and we were really pleased with ourselves. And probably because we were completely musically naive about what it would take. We presented it to Miriam and said, here, do this. And she probably went, oh my God. Anyway, you can speak for yourself, Miriam. So,
well, the most challenging part of the situation was that I had only been working on the film for a very short time, and I had only written maybe the open and a couple other cues. And then she wanted me, and I really like to work linear so that I can kind of so the score can evolve with the material. So she wanted me to immediately stop and work on the end. And I didn't know any of what was going to happen in between. I had no idea where the music was going to go. And so that was the only daunting thing about it, was that it took a while for us to figure out how to do the ending, because at first it's like hunting and pecking. They sent me what they had, and then I thought about it and I did some stuff and sent it back. And they went, aha. And then they, figured more stuff out and changed it. And this is my favorite form of collaboration, because you can't talk about music. You have to just show people something and let them react to it and respond. So every time I'd send something, they'd respond. And through that, we kind of inched our way through the cut, and it really went on for a while, which was the only thing I was scared about, because we had this deadline, and I'm thinking, my God, I'm still working on this. And I haven't even, there's like 3/4 of the film I haven't even looked at yet, and so I was sort of, Maria, is it okay if I move over here? No, I keep going, so I kept going and figured it out, and we got closer and closer. And then at a certain point, they cut me loose to go back, and then they worked on it some more, So by the time I came back to it, I had a lot more material that I had developed, and we knew it had to be, they had cut in different performances of the song. It's one of the brilliant things about it is it starts with a live, actually on-camera performance at the march with all the women singing with her. And thank God she sang in tune in the same key. I mean, we did have to do a little bit of tuning, but she was singing, every version was in the same key, which was like amazing, So that helped. And then, I mean, is this interesting? Because I could, cut it further.
Well, and you're talking.
Yeah.
Are you talking about Milk?
Yeah. Oh, I love her. And I love her. She turned out to be a really good singer. I didn't realize how good she was till we were in the studio. So then we had to figure out, okay, so they had this version here, and Liz chose really good parts of the song in different places in this sequence. So I was able to kind of, okay, this is here, and this is here, and then at the end they want the choir version. So I had that as my outline, and then I had to kind of fill in everything in between. So the challenge with music is, as they're cutting, things are changing, and I had it all perfect, and then I have to go back and figure out, okay, they cut off 3 beats. It's just a musical puzzle. How do I make it sound natural where they've cut it, So that's just the craft part, solving the musical puzzle. But once we had our concept, and then it was like, oh God, how are we going to do this? Like, where are we going to get a choir, And that's when, Maria and Bonnie Greenberg got together with us. She's a wonderful music supervisor, and she found a free studio, like a really great free studio that was set up to do a choir. And then they figured out a choir, and then Milk came in and we did her lead vocals. I mean, it was just kind of this amazing thing that they just willed it to happen. Maria never gave up until she was supposed to fly in for the session, and then what happened?
And the airlines conspired against me, and I could not get out of O'Hare. And finally at 7:00 at night, I was supposed to be there I was supposed to be in California in an hour. Yeah. I just said, I'm not going to make it. And
you would have had a great time. I would have had a great time.
And I went home. But what was also interesting is while Miriam was composing, Liz and I were figuring out the visuals, right? And how we work with Audre Lorde's text, and how we would have the 5 young women read from the text, and whether or not that would even work. I mean, we did get some feedback initially that, no, do you really want, that's a different, what are you doing having these women read from the text? You're setting this all up. And I was like, yeah, we are, and get over it. Because we both felt, Liz and I both felt that it worked emotionally. So I understood the comments, right? As a documentary filmmaker, I get it. I get what I'm doing. But I think Liz and I believe so much in the power of doing that we didn't listen.
But what was fantastic about that? You could see that, like, for me, it was new material. Like, I've never read Audre Lorde, but the women reading it was new to them. And they were actually responding on camera as they read it. Like, wow. I think that was what made it really.
It really was powerful. Yeah, absolutely. Oh.
Yeah, and I think sometimes documentary purists sometimes have a problem with that, where you set something up and it's more stylistic and it's not so truthy, but it's I think some of that more stylized stuff can be very fun, and it's no one thinks that it's not set up. You know what I mean? It's not like we're trying to pass it off as like everyone naturally, like, you know, sat down to read Audre Lorde. And I just think some of that stuff is, you know, can be real fun in documentary to play with.
But it was
that,
truth.
You know?
It was very truthy because of their own reactions.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, like, yes, exactly.
Yeah.
But
Different.
And we had also with the graphics started creating things that also don't happen normally. You don't, generally speaking, see one of the 100 natural laws of clitoris on the Mormon Tabernacle Church.
Never seen that before, no.
Never seen that before. And actually, this is sort of a
Nice
funny
addition.
story. So, you know, in the bus scene where Becca is passing out her poetry, and at the end of the scene, you see in the bus, clitoris, say my name, say my name. My sister, who's an incredibly smart woman, she runs a tech company, called me up and she said, how did you get the clitoris on the bus? I said, I put it there. She said, oh. Anyway, so we had already done that, right? We'd already stepped over the line and put all this stuff there. And so,
yeah, it's a film with a strong POV, you know,
Yeah.
strong editorial, you know, vision, you know.
so.
Well, and especially because Sophia's work was also like the 100 Laws. That was astounding. So all of that just really fit in well throughout. Like it was woven together so well.
Yeah.
And that was a little bit of synchronicity, I think, in terms of having Sophia's work and using those kinds of graphics throughout. That was very cool.
And I think what I would say, what I realized is that work is so powerful, and it's powerful because we didn't create the connections in the women's lives. They are in their lives, right? And so what she's writing about in those laws are in fact we all live them, right? We all live them. And so that's where that you know, her clitoris, that brilliant piece of work was so instrumental for Liz and I in terms of structuring this film. And the only reason we could do it was because the connections were real.
Yes. And I think we all have to thank Sophia for making us all more clitorate. It's amazing. I didn't really know what the clitoris looked like in its whole before seeing Sophia's work.
Yeah, I when I met her in 2013, I went to New York for something else, and I thought, okay, I need to meet this woman because I'd asked her to be in the film. And so she was showing me the work and then showing me a textbook with the clitoris in it, and I thought, huh. And you know, we ask ourselves, imagine that there are 4 men on a Zoom call and they're all saying, I didn't know what the penis looked like. That's absurd. It's absurd, right? It would never happen. And yet that is the prevailing thing that all women say was, wow, who knew?
Yeah.
Right?
And, you know, one question that came to mind through all this and learning that there was so little in textbooks in the Grey's Anatomy about women's parts, it was like, okay, now I think men actually knew how much power women yield and wield. And I wonder, did they omit all this on purpose for fear that women might discover, some of the women that didn't know how much power they wield, did they omit it on purpose because they were afraid of that?
Oh, yes, absolutely. It wasn't an accident. Nobody dropped the pages onto the on the way to the publishers. It's purposeful. So if you ask the question, why omit knowledge to somebody? Well, knowledge is power. So if you lie to women about their anatomy and the physiology of their bodies, then you can lie to them about anything. And that's what happens. And then what I feel, and Liz, you can talk about this as well, what's so important in the film is that it's not just that you then don't know you have this organ on your body, and you therefore can't say to your partner, this is what feels good to me, it's here, move to the left. It's that your voice isn't heard in other ways. It's not heard in the classroom. It's not heard in the boardroom. You don't speak up for yourself when you're demanding a raise. Women don't feel entitled to what they own as being part of humanity.
Yeah.
That to me has always been the bottom line of the film, which is, yes, it's about the clitoris, but it's really not about the clitoris. It's about the way we silence women and make them ashamed of who they are.
Well, the pattern historically, you just look at the history of most religions. What is it always about? Women covering up, hiding, being ashamed of menstruation. It's like really unbelievable. But it's so universal that it's called the patriarchy.
Yeah,
Exactly. No accident. Yeah.
It's not an accident. No childcare when you want to go to work.
Well, and it's not that. So I'm working on another short film with Sophia for something else, and one of the points in this short film is, Audre Lorde goes on to say that you can't destroy the master's house with the master's tools. And she's also talking about race, right? And the whole notion of the clitoris and the way Sophia goes on, and we make the point in the film, is the clitoris as a metaphor, is that in a culturally clitorate world, there is no master's house. It's not that we want to replace men as masters. We don't. Women don't. People of color do not. They want a world in which there is no master's house. And that, to me, this film is the first conversation about that, which is that we're not asking that you not have pleasure so we can have pleasure. We're simply saying, can't we all get together on this whole thing? I'm sharing my body with you. Can it not be mutually beneficial to me?
With the women who are in the film, did you get the feeling that they felt like they were making progress?
Oh, yes. So I got to know them all very, very well. And even though, like Liz was saying, this is not a traditional narrative, right? This is not about a sports team making it to the finals. That's not that film. Because in watching the 5 women through the course of 2 years of filming, saw how they changed over time. And they changed because I was constantly in their face about these issues, talking to them about it, and they were thinking about it. And so all of them said, like in the beginning, Jasmine, when I started filming with her, she was not out as a sex worker. So none of her close friends knew. She wasn't public about it. By the end of the film, by the time the film came out, she was proudly public about it. Sunny told me that she had finally figured out how to pick the right kind of man in her life and demand more, and that she was now in a relationship with somebody she cared deeply about, and it was because of the process of this film. Liz, Umnia well. Maybe you can talk a little bit about Umnia.
I mean, yeah, she also just, progressed in the same manner. I just love that. I think 2 of the younger subjects that we had cut all their hair off, in the process of filming, and I think there's something kind of, symbolic about that. Yeah.
So I guess the way I've always made films is to be deeply connected to the people in my films. And so I change emotionally, and in some ways they do as well. And one of the saddest things for me was that because of the pandemic, we could not all get together and have a premiere of the film in which they could all be celebrated. Because it's like this emotional coming together, which both the filmmakers need and the people in it need as well. And that's, for me, been the biggest loss, is that we've never had that moment. You need it in a film.
You're going to have to create it for sure.
Yeah,
No,
we will.
Yeah. And how about Dr. Dutton and Dr. Diamond, do you think that they feel their work is helping to progress things in their ways?
I think so. I think what's interesting about Lisa and also Stacey is that I came and filmed them for a little bit and then I disappeared for 2 years, right? Almost. And so for them, it's kind of a leap of faith as to what I'm going to do with their work. And it's a very generous leap of faith because I come, I film, and then I turn around and walk away. And when you're almost done with a film, or when you've got it to the way you think you like it, you send it out to all the people who are in it and say, please look at this. Tell me what you're concerned about. You know, let us know if there are any issues. And it's always a little bit of a gulp moment for a filmmaker, right? And when I sent it both to Stacey and Lisa Diamond, their response was, oh my God, this is awesome. I'm so proud to be associated with this film, right? And so that's what you want, because I want to honor the work they do with work that is as good as what they're trying to do. And, you know, you really don't want to get it wrong.
No, you didn't. And I have to say that, well, I've supported a Kickstarter project from Crave, and I'm expecting my Duet Pro any day.
You will not be disappointed. I speak from experience.
Did not think so. Just the way that she goes about her work and the fact that they're completely different products than what has been in the market in the past, and the fact that you can actually wear some of their products. They're beautiful.
Yeah.
Just blew me away.
When I went to San Francisco to shoot with T, at the end of the shoot, I said to everybody on the crew, all right, I'm buying vibrators. Pick the vibrator you want. I always do that. And I remember then I got on the phone with my daughter, who was, was in her 20s at that point, and I said, go on the website and pick the one you want, and I'll buy you a vibrator. And when I got off the phone, the woman who was the tech assistant on that shoot turned to me and she said, well, you have a much different relationship with your daughter than I have with my mom. And I was like, I lost my filter, right? I lost my filter after 2 years of working on this film. So it was just like, what kind of vibrator do you want? How about it,
Yeah, I was so thrilled because for one reason or another, of course, COVID got in the way. I hadn't had the time to actually go look at their website and take a look. And then it was just like, oh, it's the last few days of the Kickstarter campaign. I thought, perfect timing.
Well, and to speak about her work just briefly, one of the reasons, or the important reason she's in the film, and she came into the film late, was that when I got on the phone with her, she talked about the importance of industrial design in our lives as human beings. And that when you think about the products we use, most of them are designed by men. And that when you think about the products that women use for their pleasure, they're icky looking, they're stupid, they're plastic. And she made the point that I thought was really true, was that we all kind of think well about ourselves depending on the products we use, which is why Apple is so successful. We love our things, and that women deserve elevated products for their own pleasure as well. And I thought that was a really interesting point that wasn't in the film prior to that.
Yeah. No, it was really an interesting component for sure. Their whole, the way they brought things together, their little Airstream trailer, everything was just so beautiful, so lovely. Yeah.
Well, and the fact about how they weren't able to use social media because it was about women and it was elegant. It wasn't even porn, it was. Yeah. Point well taken.
Yeah. So I was happy to see that they seem to be succeeding in what they're doing. That's great. Yeah. So one thing that I would like to bring up is the fact that this really should be in schools, but also that parents should be talking to their sons about women's sexuality and the clitoris specifically.
I think that's right. And I think it's the reason it's important is because boys are, they don't have any good tools in the toolbox either when it comes to sex education. And so they're sort of put in this position where they're the ones who are supposed to know what makes their partner feel good. Well, how are they supposed to know? Right? And so I think it's important that I think men and boys would welcome the knowledge about female pleasure, because I really think the majority of men as partners want their partners to enjoy the experience. I really do. And that just means that coming together, you have two equal participants as opposed to one participant and a passive receptacle, right? I don't know, Liz, you're a young hip woman. What do you think?
I mean, I agree. I mean, I'm all for, men knowing about the clitoris, but yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely something out there. And I think that kind of the direction that some sex ed is taking is around consent, and I think that leads into does it feel good for you? Or does it still feel good for you? And I think that is, conducive to some more of this, making sure your partner feels pleasurable. I mean, you still need to know where the clitoris is, what it is, all that stuff, very important. But I think, there is a move in some places, I should say.
But it also, this kind of conversations between people will lead to more mutual respect.
Yeah,
which
absolutely.
is always, now we're talking about this in a respectful way, and wow, you're a person and I care how you feel. I care how what I do affects you.
Right.
And it would help to steer them away from the objectification
Yes,
absolutely.
of the sexual partner.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and when daughters know about it and can speak openly about it, then maybe they will feel more inclined to talk to their partners about it and open up the discussion. I think that's all it will take. So this is a fantastic start. Well, thank you all so much for seeing the need around this very dilemma and contributing to helping make us all more clitorate. Huge thanks to the women in the film who work every day to help adjust this world that we live in. So thank you all for taking the time today to be with us. And I hope you actually take in some more of the films that we'll be screening, that we're screening during DocLands.
Well, thank you very much. We are really excited to be included in the program and honored by being chosen. Thank you.
Our pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having us.